away east of Omaha. You can listen to the engines moaning out a one-note song and think about the woman or the girl you knew the night before. And a man and we.
All right, here we go. Another Square Dance Callers Talking. Tonight, we're going to turn the tables a little bit. Tonight, I have Charlie Robertson with me, and he is going to talk to me. He wants to be in charge of this one, so have at it. He is C1. I am C2.
Yes.
What's going on, Charlie?
Well, not a whole lot, Charlie. How you doing, man?
I'm doing awesome, man. It's great to talk to you again, buddy.
It is good to talk to you, and it is good to be on this side of the table this time.
Okay.
This is going to be fun. So just to let everybody know, a few weeks ago, I was watching one of the episodes, and I thought to myself, these are really cool, and I'm glad you do them, but nobody's ever talked to you. And so I shot you a text message and said, give me a holler when you get a chance. And we talked on the phone, and I gave you the idea, and you were like, yeah, cool.
Yep.
So I'm glad we're finally getting to do this, man.
This is, man, I appreciate you asking. First of all, I love doing the podcast, and I don't know which number you were. I had you a while back when I had you on. And so it kind of got into a thing where I really look forward to all of them. And I talked to Betsy Gata last night, and
cool.
that'll come out in a couple of weeks. And
Betsy's a neat lady, man. I like her a lot. She's. I don't
want to say. Well, this is going to be after, because her podcast will come out by the time I put this one out. Her stories are amazing.
I'm looking forward to that.
I'll say it now. The story at the end where she tells me where she gets stabbed. Do you know that story?
Lord. No.
Oh, of course, it'll already be out. She'll have already said it and all that. But yes, when she was a teenager, she got stabbed at a square dance with a knife.
Oh my God, that's crazy.
It's really good. It's a great story. But
I look forward to seeing that episode.
What I mean is, I'd seen Betsy at Caller Labs and things like that, but never spoken to her. And of course, where she is in New Jersey, I've never heard her call because I don't know how much YouTube, if anything, there is.
Right.
So, but I'd heard about her, and so I just reached out to her via cedar.net, finding everybody's emails. And so that's what I've done now. So with the podcast, it's a lot of fun. I'm getting into people that I've never met or spoken to. So I'm learning a lot, and it's fun because you and a lot of the other callers I've already talked to, we've got a relationship outside of the podcast because we've hung out before. Yeah. We spent a lot of time, and so it's a lot of fun there. But man, I appreciate you wanting to do this, and so it was awesome when you called me.
Oh, I'm just, like I said, this is. I'm excited about this. So, I'm going to take things. I have some prepared questions that I put together for you. I watched several of the episodes. I've seen most of them, I think. But I'm going to go a little bit out of order here since we're talking about the podcast. What inspired you to start Square Dance Callers Talking?
I bring it up to a couple of people, usually before the podcast start. And about a year ago now, or a little over a year, there's a club down here in Atlanta, and they have a winter like luau. It's Hot Atlanta Squares. It's the one that put it on. Yep. And they had Ted Lizotte, Tom Miller, and Sandy Bryant calling for their weekend. I couldn't make the dance that Saturday night that they had, but I called Ted and I said, "Hey, buddy, I can't make the dance, but I'd love to take y'all out to dinner since I don't get to see y'all that often." And so he's like, "Yeah, this is what time we're getting out." And so I went over and I picked the three of them up. Now, I'd never met Sandy Bryant before. I knew Ted and Tom pretty well. I knew who Sandy was. I'd heard about her. And so we go to eat, and we're sitting there, and Sandy's sitting next to me, and they're telling Square Dance Caller stories, as we always do when we get together. And she was telling me, she said, "Charlie, one night," and just being blunt, she said, "One night I was bored calling at a dance. And so I took my Bluetooth headset and put it in my ears, and I listened to a basketball game while I was calling." And I was like, "Are you kidding me?" Because I still struggle with getting the corner on a good night, sometimes. And I'm just like, "Oh my God," and I said, "You were listening to something?" And she said, "Yes." She goes, "I'm fine. I know what I'm doing up there."
And she's probably calling C3A or something too.
So there's probably some crazy high level, and And so, and I'm just looking for a Alaman left, and promenade home, and she's C3B, and but it struck me as funny because and what happened is I've got a lot of friends in Georgia in this area that don't get to travel for whatever reason, work or just life, whatever. They don't get to go to Color Lab conventions like we got coming up. They don't get to go on the cruise, which I'm fortunate. There it is,
Yeah, I was going to
top
ask
of
you about
line
that,
cruise.
but we'll get to that in a minute. Yeah.
They don't get to go to those, and so I'll come back, and if I meet up with them on a Friday night at a dance, I'm like, oh my gosh, man, Charlie Robertson told me this story, or Sandy Bryant told me this story, and we're just sitting around laughing. And I thought, how can I get these stories out? And so I thought, hey, why don't I do a podcast? And so one of my callers down here, Shawn Butler, I called him up and I said, hey, get on Zoom. I'd never used Zoom before. I knew I had it on because of COVID. I had it on my laptop as if I was ever going to need it in police work. And so I had a record button and I recorded, and I was like, oh, this works out pretty well, just like we're doing tonight. And so that's where it comes from. I just wanted callers to get their stories out. And, whether it be funny stories or educational, whatever, because I just love square dance calling and square dancing. And so that's where it is. So Sandy Bryant, who, by the way, I'm going to talk to in about 3 weeks and get a
Awesome.
podcast with her finally. She is the reason I started this, or
That
the
is so
stories.
cool.
So
Very, very cool. Now, do you know how many episodes have you done so far?
I know that 53 have been released. I think I've got two. So I think I'm about 55 or 56 now. And I
Very
do
cool.
it pretty much every Friday is the plan. So, matter of fact, March the 11th was 1 year that I've been doing them. So
Wow.
that would be
Now,
season 1, I guess.
do you have a favorite episode?
Well, I tell you, if you have to go by the reactions I got and the views, the Real Housewives
Oh,
of
yeah.
Square Dance, you know, it was one of my favorites because I know you guys, I know the husbands of the wives that were on there. I know y'all pretty well because we've spent time together. We've done things together. The wives I know kind of well. I've met several. I've known them for a couple of years now, and so I enjoyed that one because we were on the cruise and it was a different setting. So that was a
Right.
lot of fun. I'm trying to think. I tell you, when I talked to Vernon Jones, and because I'm a huge baseball fan, grew up loving and playing baseball and played up until I got out of high school, and I realized there was no call for a 5'6" major league pitcher. I wasn't going any further than that, so I didn't play college or anything. And but I just loved the game, and I had no idea. And Vernon's telling me about, being the bat boy and the ball boy for Nolan Ryan, who was just
Yeah.
one
Isn't
of
that
my
amazing?
idols. And so talking to him, I think that's the podcast. The ones that surprised me, catch me off guard, the Betsy Gotti story. I mean, when you watch
Right.
that video, I almost fall out of this chair that I'm sitting in because she was like, "Yeah, I had a little blood on my leg." I was like, "What?" And I literally will listen to it. I said, "What, did you get scratched?" And she said, "No, he stabbed me." And I was like, "Are you kidding me?" So I don't have just a favorite of all. I tell you what I love most about it is getting to talk to you, getting to talk to Tony, to Ted, um, to Tom Miller, because I don't get to talk to everybody on a regular basis,
Right.
unfortunately. So um, they're all like my favorites. Each one of them has a little different thing about it, so favorites, I'm going to go with the Real Housewives because it was everybody else's favorite, I guess, because they blew past everybody in views. So I'll go
Yeah,
with
and
that.
they did it quickly too.
They did.
It was amazing.
I mean, they caught everybody, and I guess at the third week they passed, and they went past Tony, who was on top of everything numbers wise, and so it was, and that was a lot of fun. I'm looking forward at some point to sit them down again. I don't know when that, maybe at Nationals, who knows?
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah,
Because
it's a really
we
good.
have little to no time at Caller Lab. Caller Lab is packed in 3 days, and I mean,
Yeah.
you just got to
Yeah.
go, and it's constant. So, but yeah, so
Yeah.
the favorite ones is the Real Housewives, and all the rest are, they have different reasons that they're my favorites.
Sure. Sure. Yeah, the housewives are a special group of ladies, man.
Yes, they are.
They're a lot of fun to be around, and quite honestly, myself and the rest of the husbands, we just kind of get out of their way and let them do what they're going to do. Um, it's a joy to sit back and watch, though. I tell you, we have a lot of fun. So, are you calling full time, or you have a day job?
Yes,
How do
I
those
do
work?
have a day job. As most people know, I'm in law. I'm a police officer. I've been doing that all my life outside of high school. Once I got out of high school, and it was painfully obvious I was not going to be a major league baseball player. I decided I need to find another line of work. Um, and so I got into law enforcement just because I didn't know what else to do. But started square dance calling about 12, 14 years ago now. And so I can retire. I can retire in July if I like, but I'm probably going to go through December, finish out the
Okay.
year. Um, and then so I'll be a full-time caller if you want to call it that. But yes, I a little over a year and a half ago now, I got hired by a club in Calhoun, Georgia, which is about 50 miles north of Atlanta. If anybody wants to find it on a map like that, straight up 75. And they hired me as their club caller, me and uh, so I call every first and third Thursday with them, and
Excellent.
that's a huge benefit to my calling. Because
Yeah.
I mean, and of course you can talk about it too, but you know when you call a guest tip once or twice a month, that's great and it's good for you, but you're not learning anything.
Right.
You're what you're learning is what you don't know. You're like,
Yep.
man, how am I going to get better at this? And I joke with people. I was like, you can call to your living room floor all night, and you're not going to get any better at it. So I was fortunate enough. I tried out for the club. They hired me, and so I've been with them. They voted. They vote every October. They voted me again October to go this next year coming up. So I've been calling regular, and I do quite a bit of traveling for somebody that's full time employed still. I get around, and of course, I hit all the conventions that I can. So yeah, I'm calling regular now, and I can see a difference in my calling. Hopefully the dancers can too.
Awesome. That's awesome, man. Yeah, there is nothing better than having a club that you can consistently call for at whatever level.
Yep.
And it's even better if you can teach that level. I can't tell you how much I have learned over the years by teaching.
Mhm.
I mean, you come up with, obviously you get to know the definitions very, very well, but you come up with wonderful ways to use a call when you're teaching it. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, man, you're just getting that consistency on the mic. It's awesome.
I know I bring him up a lot when I'm talking to people and all that, but Tony Oxendine, several callers, mentor wise and everything else, have really helped me um, going forward. But Tony, I've known him for about 5 good years. I've known him for a few years longer than that, but we've really talked a lot. We see each other on a semi-regular basis, whether it be moving around or whatever. But Tony always told me, he was like, Charlie, he set me down 2 years ago and said, you are not going to get better at this until you get a club and you teach.
Yep.
And I was like, well, Tony, I'm doing all I can. And he was like, even if you got to get 8 people to get in your garage, I don't care what you do. You have to do it consistently. And so, it just happened to, after that, about 2 months after that speech, is when Calhoun, Cherokee Promenaders is what the club's called. They hired me. And I called Tony and I was like, hey, man, I got a club finally. I got a club. He's like, that's awesome. He goes, now you got to start teaching, Charlie.
Yep.
I've done full SSD with the club that we have now. I've done full mainstream, and we just finished plus, and we just started 2 weeks ago. We're doing SSD again. I think we have nine or 10 students coming in this
Yeah.
time. So we are teaching, and again, as soon as everything Tony said, it's come true as far as that. With the regular calling and teaching, and just like you were talking about with the teaching, it forces you to figure out, how do I get that couple back to where so we can do this same, we can do touch a quarter again. And
Yeah.
I don't have to say, everybody go back home, let's start that. So I've learned more than the students ever have in the
Oh,
first year
absolutely.
that I've been teaching. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Not
I
only do
agree
you
with
learn
that.
how to get them back where you started from, but you learn how to get them back to do a different part of the call.
Yep,
And yeah, it's just teaching is such a great learning experience for the teacher.
it is.
And I think it's fabulous.
And even, because and I'm sure you probably do it the same way, you probably have a different way too, but like going into Thursday night, I know I'm going to try and teach these 4 calls. Now I might get one pass out, I might not get to the 4th, I don't know.
Right.
But I sit there and I will reread the definitions of touch a quarter. I know what touch a quarter is from every
Right.
position you can be standing in, but I'll go back and I'll go over the definition. That way, when I go into it, and when I'm doing pattern now, I don't even hear the calls in my head, because usually if I'm doing sight, if you want to call it that, I see, I don't hear the call anymore before I say it. I see where the person is going to be,
That's
so
awesome.
I've got a little
Yeah.
foresight. I don't know if that's the right word, but you've got to know where the dancers are going to be before you call it. And I
Yep.
didn't understand that a year ago. And so I do now. And so it's a different level that I'm looking at when I'm calling
Yeah.
now. So it's a huge
Yeah.
help.
Yeah. It's such an amazing teaching tool for you
It is.
Um, so let's talk about your beginnings in calling. What inspired you to start calling?
Again, I've never been a real outgoing type person, and what I mean by that is I um I was dancing for years, and I was dancing probably 2011, 2012, in Kennesaw, Georgia. I was a member of a club there, my wife and I both, and we were dancing. And I bring this guy up a lot too, Shawn Butler. He was good friends with the caller, a gentleman named Ray Monty, who's passed away a couple of years ago. And I knew Ray quite well. We would sit on the stage and just talk to him, not about calling, but just about stuff.
Right.
Really nice guy. And I heard one night at the end of the dance, I heard him tell Shawn, he said, "Hey, I'm going to send you a couple modules on email. Just learn those and we'll talk about them later." And I looked at Ray and I said, "What are you talking about?" And he said, "Shawn wants to learn to call." And he said, "So I'm sending him some modules." I didn't even know what a module was. And I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "Well, he wants to learn to call, so I'm giving him little modules like, right and left through, veer left, Ferris wheel, centers pass through." And I was like, oh,
Right.
okay, okay. And I said, "Well, can you do that for me? I'd like to do it because I love doing karaoke, and I just always wondered, how can I get up on a microphone and sing?" And so he was like, "Sure." So he started doing that, and it was still records in 2011, 2012 ish. I mean, it was going to CDs back then. And so he gave me a couple of records. He said, "Hey, buddy, just take these, learn these records, and we'll do singing calls." And for a year and a half, I did nothing but singing calls. Every other Friday, I'd go and he'd put me up there, and he would do patter, and then I would do a singing call.
Okay.
And so that's where it went. And after about a year and a half, he said, "Buddy, you got to learn to do patter." And I'm like, "No, I'm good. I'll be all right. I'll just stick with these singing calls." And so that's where it started. Around 2012, I decided, hey, I want to do this. And around 2014, I came up with a bright idea. I found a club that would let me do a Friday night dance for them, and I'm like, "Hey, let me do it." And it was a disaster. I was writing stuff down, trying to read it and everything, but I could knock out a singing call for you, but the patter was always a struggle. And so, but I've come a long way since then. But that's where it started, and I love being on a microphone and being the center of attention. So it's a lot of fun.
That's that's really cool. I think a lot of us started off doing singing calls.
Mm-hmm.
Singing calls are kind of I'm not gonna say they're the easy thing, but they're probably the easier part of calling. Patter, you got to actually put some work in and
Yeah.
figure things out because there's no hiding behind lyrics.
There's not, and I tell you, I guess the best part about singing calls is it was just like that. It's really just karaoke because whatever pattern is on the record is what I was memorizing. So I could
Okay.
come up there and I could do your call for you. Now, and I picked this up in caller schools and everything else. I'll buy a piece of music and I listen to the music first. Then I'll probably, depending on who's doing the vocals on it, If it's
Right.
somebody that I really like, I'll listen to them, and then I'll kind of mimic that a little bit. But
Sure.
immediately I used to think, boy, this is a good song because this is a plus song. I can use it because the pattern was plus in the song. I didn't know that I could switch them in and out, you know, back then. And so now, I just buy it and I listen. If I like the music, is what sells me first, and then I might listen to the lyrics depending on who's doing it. But other
Yeah.
than that, it's just like I'll pick it up. There's a couple that I have right now that I don't even know who does the lyrics on it because I just picked it up. I listen to the music and I'm like, all right, let's go. Now I'll look at the sheet for the
Oh,
words.
sure.
Um, but and so I'll just start doing my own singing calls from there. And you just throw whatever patterns you want in there at that point. I used to
Absolutely.
think,
Absolutely.
and one of them, and I think it's Tom Miller did Country Girl Shake It for me. And
Uh-huh.
the pattern that he does on it is a plus. And so for 4 solid years, when I had a plus tip, that was the song you were getting because I knew the pattern in it. And you were getting 4 patterns in a row just like that. And and so of course now I'll do it as a mainstream because I love the song and the music's great. But I'll change up, and put whatever in. So I've learned a lot. I'll give you that.
That's great. I was getting prepared for this. I was reading through your website,
Okay.
and you mentioned something in there that you have this really cool analogy about how square dance calling relates to your day job. Do you know what I'm referring to?
Yeah. Yeah.
Talk about that.
That's awesome that you picked up on that. I've told people that, and they're just like, okay. And um, in my years in law enforcement, that I've been doing it for a really long time now. Um, I can't tell you how much I've directed traffic and stood in a four-way intersection or stood in an intersection with God only knows how many lanes when the power's out or whatever. And I've always equated doing patter to directing traffic. I've got 8 cars going in every different direction, and my goal is that they don't have any type of accident, and I get them home. I get them safely home every single time they come through the intersection. And there's times I'm standing up there. Uh, Another thing too, I love when a club has a look, even if it's just a little stage that's raised up a little bit, because unfortunately, again, at my 5'6" on a good day, uh, I'm usually the shortest person in the room. So if I've got one square standing in front of me and my number one couple is a 6 foot man and a 5'7" woman, I can't see anybody else.
Right.
So when I'm looking over the top and I'll see all those people, there's times I just see an intersection of cars moving around, and I'm like, all right, here we go. So yeah, I equate it to directing traffic is what I'm doing when I'm doing pattern, and my
I
goal
think
is that nobody gets in a wreck and everybody gets back home.
I thought that was brilliant when I read that. I'm like,
Oh,
okay, we got to
awesome,
talk
man,
about
that's
that for sure.
great.
That's cool. So, do you have a particular favorite call that you like?
Um, I really like Relay the Deucey. Um, Somebody had asked me that before. I love it just because, again, when I'm higher than the dancers on a stage or something, I love to watch Relay the Deucey when it's going. It gives me a couple extra beats to think about what I want to do from that
Hmm.
point if it's something that I haven't planned out. But I just like the movement in Relay the Deucey. So
Yeah, really, the Ducey has always been one I've enjoyed a great deal, and it's mostly because it's timed out so perfectly.
mhm.
If you do it right and you're taking one step for each beat of music, you should end up together exactly at the
Yeah,
same time. And yeah, that's always been one I've enjoyed.
yeah.
When I was a very young man, I was had the opportunity to go to a very very large dance at the Hollywood Palladium,
Okay.
which is a rather iconic venue in
Hmm.
California and Hollywood. And I at one point in the dance, I went up into the stands and went as high as I could go to look as sharply down on the squares as I possibly could. And it was really almost mesmerizing to watch. It was like a kaleidoscope watching the
Nice. Yeah.
dancers move around, and we spent we've spent several years kind of losing the dance part of square dancing, and we're
Mhm.
really working on getting it back now, and have made great strides in getting the dancing part back into
Yeah.
dancing. And that's why I love those calls that flow like that. So I completely get where you're coming from that.
That's one
Let's
thing
get
I've noticed since COVID, and I'm sure the calling too, but the dancing level abilities dropped off a little bit, I think, because I
uh-huh.
mean, when you take a year and a half to 2 years, and some people are more than 2 years that they didn't dance,
Oh yeah,
and that's one of the things that I've really struggled with. Relay the Deucey, for some reason, it's just tough for some people to
of
dance it.
course.
And so I really, when I just finished the plus lessons that we've done, I spent a lot of time on Relay the Deucey. I'm like, you got to know this because one, it's my favorite call, and two, you know, every caller's calling it. You're getting Relay the Deucey. There might be
Oh yeah,
other stuff that you don't hear. You might not hear a crossfire, you know, from some certain caller for whatever reason. They just don't call
right.
it. And there's other things, but you're always going to hear Relay the Deucey. I don't
Oh
care.
yeah,
You're going to hear it. So you need to be able to dance it. And so, yeah. So hopefully the dancing does come back to a good level at everyone mainstream, SSD, mainstream, and plus up into the A's and C's.
yeah.
So, yeah.
I think one of the things that we've or callers in general have been talking about for a long time is kind of slowing the learning process back down to
Hmm.
let people get to know the level that they're dancing better, and before they're trying to jump onto a new level. And I think that is really helping. From the
Sure.
traveling around that I do, and getting to see the dancers, it seems to really be helping. And I think SSD is a big part of that. I think,
Yeah.
not kind of really not encouraging people to run through the levels, and to have them just enjoy the level they're at, and let the caller really develop good choreography at that level. It takes a little bit of work, as you know, but
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
uh, it's there's a lot of good information at all of these levels that people can stay there a little longer and enjoy it. Let's get away from calling for a minute.
Sure.
Um, so tell me about your family. I know your beautiful bride, Marcia, but
Hmm.
tell me about the rest of your family.
Yep. Well, we have one son. Marcia and I have been married. Should be quicker on this, but it's 30. What year is this? 2024. It's going to be 35 years.
Far out,
Um,
man.
yep. Um, we have one son. He's 33. That's another way I keep up with how many years we've been married. And he's awesome. He's married. Lives about 30 minutes from us, and we have a grandson also who's about 17 months old now,
Very
and
cool.
so that's awesome. And still, I've got a couple brothers and all that, and everybody that we all kind of live in this area now. I've got my mother-in-law. She still lives down in Savannah, where we're from, and that's where we are. And my wife retired a year and a half ago,
Very
and
good.
I'm not far behind her, so we'll get to do some more traveling.
That's great. Now you mentioned you grew up in the Savannah area,
Hmm.
and what took you to Atlanta from Savannah?
Yeah, I grew up. I was born and raised in Thunderbolt, Georgia, which is um, it's in the center of Savannah. Savannah is a big city, or it's not a big city for Atlanta, but it's a city. And in the middle of that city is a little town called Thunderbolt, of
Oh,
about probably 2,000 people now. It's right on the Wilmington River, so I grew up on the river, swimming in salt water, and loved the water. And only thing I knew up until I think when Marcia and I decided probably in '98 that we were tired of living in Savannah in that area. And like I said, I had a brother that lived up here, aunt and uncle that lived in Atlanta. And so I said, and we were coming up here, going to Six Flags, going to Braves games, going to, well, we didn't go to a Falcons game. We go to Braves games, we go to Six Flags. We come up every month and hang out with my brother or my cousin. I've got a cousin that's 4 months younger than me, so we were like brothers growing up. Um, and So I said, hey, let's move. So we sold everything, moved up here, and I just changed. I went to a different department, and I was working police work up here, and Marcia was doing what she does. in the courts and all that. And so that was it. And what's funny is I tell everybody the first year we were here, we had seasons tickets. We had season passes to Six Flags, season passes to Whitewater. We didn't have season tickets, but we would go to a ton of Braves games. After about 2 years, never went back to Six Flags, never went to another Braves game. It's just like, I'm not dealing with this traffic. I'm not going to those crowds, so it's just like with anything. Once you have access to it, you don't want to do it anymore.
Oh, sure.
And so that was around 99 that we moved up here, 98, 99. And it's been fun, but it'll be nice to get out of here once I retire. So, because we're definitely moving. So.
Well, where do you think you're going to head to?
Definitely Florida, more than likely Tampa, Clearwater, St. Pete area.
Wow.
Again, growing up where we did in Savannah, we were, I was a 1-minute walk to the river, and my wife she will tell you when she was young, if they couldn't afford a car, they would always have a boat in the driveway. They wouldn't always have a working car, but they had a boat because they were going to the water. So we both grew up on the water, and we want to get back to that. Living in Atlanta, it's great. I enjoy it, but I like to see marsh grass when I'm driving to and from work. So.
I understand. How far away do you work from home?
6 miles.
Oh, that's not bad at all.
I have no, and that's the other thing. I have no commute. Really, my friends that still live in Savannah, we had talked about earlier. I go down there and they're like, "Man, I don't know how you do that traffic." I'm like, "Buddy, I'm not. The only time I'm in traffic is when I'm coming to see y'all, and I've got to get on the interstate to come back to Savannah. When I'm at home, I don't get on the interstate. I drive 6 miles to work, 6 miles home, and everything else I want to do is in the little town of city of Smyrna where I live. So.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
So you made mention about the T-shirt you're wearing. Why don't you tell me a little bit about that shirt?
So this is the top of the line cruises. So everything's backwards on the thing. And I will tell you that story also. A couple of years ago, we were at Caller Lab in Pittsburgh. So I guess that was probably 2 years ago now. Mm-hmm. And I was sitting with Tony Oxendine. I bring him up all the time. I was sitting with Tony and Jack, and we were sitting at a bar, shocking, drinking whiskey, shocking again, and in the lobby of the hotel. And Jack actually brought it up. Jack said, "Hey, man," he said, "are you going to go on this cruise that we've got in a year and a half?" And I said, "I don't know what you're talking about." And I've told this story before, so whoever's heard it, I'm sorry about that. But so I said, "What are you talking about?" And he goes, "Man, we got this cruise. We got a bunch of callers is going to be on it, and we've got a bunch of dancers." And he said, "It's me, it's Ted Lizotte, it's Tony, it's Justin Russell." And I said, "Stop. You don't have to say another word." I said, "You had me at Justin." I said, "I will go." Justin's one of my favorite people on the planet. I love Justin.
Amen.
And so I went, my wife was sitting over on the sofa with some of the other wives, and I went over and I said, "Hey, we got to do this cruise thing." And so she got us signed up a couple days later. And so I'd never been on a square dance cruise. I'd been on a handful of cruises with my wife, right. And we really love cruising. So we go on this cruise, and I mean, I'm a kid in a candy store. I don't know a better way of saying it, because all my favorite people, my callers that I know and I don't get to see very often, I'm on there dancing to and after parties in the bars, which is my favorite thing. And then all these dancers that there was a handful from Georgia that I knew. Others that kept coming up to me going, "Hey, you're the podcast guy." I'm like, "Yes, I'm a square dance caller too. Please call me the square dance caller guy." But so I got a lot out of that from the podcast. But so top of the line cruises, and come to find out they used to do it every year. Now they do it every 2 years.
Right.
But they just made it probably 3 times the size as it used to be. And so, I can't say enough. Is when we got back off the boat, I think it was about a week later, I told Marsha, I'm like, we're not waiting around for this, because I started seeing the Facebook. Well, she was talking to John Manning, who sets everything up for us. Uh-huh. And he said, yeah, I've already got probably half the bookings for 2 years from now. And I'm like, we are not going to get left off the boat. I'm not going to be left on the dock, going, see you later, Charlie. So we already got signed up. We've already got our room and everything planned out. So a lot of fun, man. You're a part of it, so you can certainly talk a lot about it. But top of the line cruises, it was fantastic. We were on the Wonder of the Seas. I forget what the boat is out of Galveston in a year and a half, 2 years from now.
I should be able to just rattle that right off, but
I don't know what, but it's on Facebook. It's on all the flyers and all that. Again, we've already signed up our part because I'm definitely going to go on that. Really looking for. I've never been to Galveston.
Oh, you'll love Galveston.
I'm looking forward to going over there. I've been to Texas. We went twice when my son went to the Air Force, and so boot camp always graduates from San Antonio, and so we drove to San Antonio for the boot camp graduation, and then he got his tech school was in Wichita Falls, Texas, and if there was a second home that I've never lived in, that might have been it for me. So love the Wichita Falls. I love the fact that when we flew in, you don't even get out in the airport. They bring the stairs out to the plane. And I was like, where are we? What is this place?
Yeah.
So that was a lot of fun. And I've never been to Galveston. Looking forward to actually going and just spending about a day or two. Marcia loves to plan stuff 2 or 3 days in advance for us, or 2 or 3 days after, so we can spend some time. Downside is for Caller Lab, we don't have the extra time that we wanted to spend in Dallas-Fort Worth area this time, but like Wisconsin, we're already planning going up there probably a couple days early to kind of get around and look around. So yeah, looking forward to that. So back on it though, the cruise, phenomenal. If anybody watches this and like, hey man, I don't know if I should do, it's absolutely something you don't want to miss. It's ridiculous. The dance level is ridiculous. The dancers there are amazing. You got 600, and I think Jack, somebody was joking and said, hey, we're going to do 800, and he said, no, we're not allowed to have more than 600.
Right.
So that is a lot of dancers, and that's some really good dancers. I was amazed at what the dance level, and for mainstream plus whatever,
it really was good.
It's really good dancing, and of course, the calling is just simply another level. I mean, it's you. It's I can't even think of names. Philip Cam from Germany, just amazing dude. I've talked to him several times by phone and by Facebook. So with Vernon Jones and some of these people, Scott Bennett's of the world, just amazing, the dance level. So I mean, if you enjoy square dancing, you have got to figure out how to get on this boat. It's amazing.
Yeah, we're already over 300 sold.
Yeah, it's over 300 people already. I mean, so this thing will be done by Christmas this year. It'll be full.
Oh, I'm certain. Yeah.
So
it's going to sell out.
Now's the time. You got to get on
sell out. It's going to sell out.
Top of the line cruises, and just look on Facebook. Somebody will have the flyers up all over the place right now. So
yeah, we try to get the information.
And you get a cool shirt like this.
Yes, that is a great shirt with the matching logo on the back, by the way.
But absolutely.
You don't
can't imagine what the Real Housewives podcast is going to be like 2 years from now. It's going to be amazing. So
we talked a little bit about Texas and this weekend coming up is Caller Lab, and I understand you are going to be attending.
Yes, absolutely.
And how many Caller Labs have you attended?
I do not. I want to say probably seven or eight. And because I'm terrible with dates and keeping things in order, we went to the one that was in Virginia. If that rings a bell, if you're better with dates than I am, New Mexico. I think New Mexico might have been the first or one of the early ones that I went to. Albuquerque.
Albuquerque. That was a good weekend.
And I've told a few people this too, and because I talk to Teresa on a semi-regular basis about calling and Caller Lab and everything else. And I didn't go to any conventions when I first started out. Became a member of Color Lab because Ray Monty, the guy that was teaching me, said you need to have a license to do this music if you're not with me. And he was a member of Color Lab. So I didn't know what Color Lab was. I didn't, and I was like, okay, well, whatever. And it was cheap because I was doing no dances. I was doing less than 13 a year. So, I mean, it was easy for me to get that. And it's not expensive now.
No.
But, so I don't know what brought on, hey, go to Color Lab, but Marcia and I went to the first Color Lab that we went to, and I think it was Virginia. I want to say it was Virginia. I don't know. But we went in the dances that you have every night, whether it be a record label or however they put the callers together.
Uh-huh.
We were just blown away because at the time I was just a dancer. I mean, I was calling and I was a member of Caller Lab, but I didn't consider myself an actual caller. So we were just dancers, and everybody dancing is either a caller or a partner or a spouse.
Right.
So the dancing is a really high level. And the callers up there, they're showing out because they see the other callers on the floor and they're like, hey, watch what I can do, And so Marcia and I just went back to our room and we're like, oh my God, that more people need to know about this, And of course, I got a lot out of the sessions and the classes during the day. And so I've come to where I look forward to the sessions and the classes. I went over the direction. I went all through the email highlighting the things that I want to go ahead and look at when I get there in a couple of days. But yeah, Caller Lab, huge difference in my life when it comes to calling, for sure. And it gave me access. And I tell everybody, and I won't tell the story again, but first Caller Lab I went to, Scott Bennett was sitting behind a table, and I probably bought about 3 songs. That was probably the first 3 songs I ever bought online like that.
Yeah.
And his music is just amazing. It sounds exactly, if not better, than some of the actual artists that put it out in real life. And I mean, I was just starstruck. I was like, oh my God, that's Scott Bennett. And I told Marcia, I was like, I met Scott Bennett. And she's like, who is Scott Bennett? Now, her and Scott, very close friends. But, then she was like, who is Scott Bennett? And I was like, oh, my God, listen to this. This is his song. I think I had like Simple Man or something like that. I'm like, this is Leonard Skinner. So yeah, Caller Lab was awesome to me. And I've gotten a lot more involved with it now. And so I'm looking, I can't wait for Sunday.
Yeah, me too.
I think we were wheels up at like 7:15 in the morning. And of course, with the time change, we land at 8 a.m. And I was like, and Marcia's like, that's so early. I was like, no, it's better. We can get to the hotel, see who's there and everything else. So looking forward.
We're going down actually on Friday. I have a club.
Okay.
One of my clubs is in Plano, Texas. And Mickey Brathwaite from Germany is coming over, and he's going to do my Friday night dance. We'll call a little together, but mostly it's going to be his dance. And then we're going to go over to the hotel on Saturday, and so we'll be there when you get there on Sunday. And I expect a phone call.
Absolutely. And I will tell you the homework that I've done, and I have nothing in front of me right now. I don't know who he is, but he's on the mainstream committee, isn't he?
Who, Mickey?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, he is. Yeah.
I've already looked. I know all the classes. I saw him on the mainstream, and I was like, I need to look into that because, again, when we talk about calling and at different levels and getting pushed into a plus as fast as you can sometimes, and wanting to, get more people with SSD and mainstream and all that, I thought I really need to expand my mainstream because it's kind of like that around here. Everybody wants to dance plus. Let's dance plus. Let's do plus. Let's do plus. And I'm like, if you have a good mainstream caller, you might think you're dancing plus. I've danced to some of y'all, and I'm like, this is a whole nother level of mainstream. So, but yeah, I was looking at the mainstream stuff. So,
it's funny. one of the weekends that Jet and I do every year together is here in Oklahoma, and it's called the Red River Special.
Mhm.
And during the day on Saturday, we have a half-hour session. It used to be an hour. We've decided to make it a half-hour session, and it's called "So You Think You Know Mainstream."
Nice. Okay.
And Jet and I very openly tell these people this is not mainstream that you're used to dancing, and it's not for everybody. But we hope you enjoy it. And the reason we make it a half an hour is because it's really really difficult mainstream. But
Okay.
it's funny. We have people that's the highlight of their weekend, even if they can't do a good majority of the moves. Um, they love that session.
Mhm.
So there is so much wonderful information at the mainstream level. If people would just give it a chance, and if callers would just do that little bit of extra homework, there's just so much great information.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
hope that when you were looking through the schedule, you noticed there's a wonderful session being done by Mike Seastrom and Charlie Robertson called Common Sense Calling. Just a shameless plug, by the way.
Common sense calling. Okay.
Yes. Love to love to see you in the room at that.
Absolutely.
Um,
I will be.
perfect, perfect, perfect. Um, so over the weekend
Mhm.
here was a dance. It was a multiple callers from the Oklahoma Callers and Teachers Association, and I was talking to them about the Caller Lab convention and hoping that they were coming. Several were attending, but there were a couple that asked me why, why go to Caller Lab, why be a part of Caller Lab, and I gave them my perspective, but I'd love to hear yours. What is the reason that you go to Caller Lab conventions? What do you get out of a Caller Lab convention?
Well, what we were saying earlier, the first few times I went, I just wanted to see what it was. And the first thing I got out of it was I met several people, Scott Bennett, and it's at one of them I met Ted Lazat. And, I saw Ken Ratusi, who I knew prior to. We had run into each other for whatever reason. But you get access to all these callers that if you're really into calling, you've watched some YouTube, um, or some of the callers that you see that get hired into your club. Hunter Keller is one. He came to Kennesaw, and I was just starstruck by that kid. And I still call him a kid. But and then I saw him at Caller Lab, and you can go up to and you just start talking to him, and you're like, hey, and I say guy because I mean there are lots of women, and there's a lot of women callers that I just think are fantastic. But I just use the term guy in general.
I
But
understand.
you
Yeah.
go up to these guys and you're just like, hey man, can I ask you something about this or about a singing call or whatever? I've never, and I know there's probably some out there. I've never had a bad experience where somebody was just like, man, I don't have time to talk about that stuff right now, and they just kind of move on. I know there's those callers are out there because there's police officers like that out there. Okay, there's plumbers like that out there. But Caller Lab, you're just so it's such a personal one-on-one a lot of times. The sessions that they put together every year, they change a little bit. Some of them are repeats, but
Yeah.
it'd be a different presenter. So you're getting a different outlook on it. So as far as calling, there's nothing I don't think you can do outside of a caller school that's better for your calling than going to Caller Lab because of the sessions, because of the hands-on, even the lunch where we're all sitting there eating. You might sit down next to um, Deborah Carroll Jones, and all of a sudden you're talking to her and she's just dropping all this stuff about square dance, and you're like, oh my God, this I'm having a turkey sandwich and she's telling me about, doing, ghost chickens in the sky. I'm like, that's amazing. So just the experiences you have there and getting to know people, the networking, I think is really what they push a lot of.
Yeah.
Getting to actually talk to people that, again, I'm from Georgia. That's where I am now. I've got a handful of callers that I see on a regular basis around here. And so I guess it's the different outlooks. I talk to guys around here, a lot of good callers, and but they have, this is how I like to do it. But then I go out there and I talk to Vernon Jones, and he's like, this is how I like to do it. And I'm like, well, I like that too. So I'm going to get that and I'm going to bring it back. So,
And then you mix those together and it becomes the way you like to do it.
absolutely. And and like I was saying, what drew us in, what locked me into Color Lab were those dances on Sunday night, Monday night, Tuesday night. It's just another level. And even I think last year or the year before, one of the nights it was just advanced, and I was like, ugh, I can't dance advanced. I sat in there and watched, just because I was listening to it. But so Color Lab means a lot. One, it protects you with the licenses and the insurance and all that, sure. But Color Lab will absolutely make you a better caller if
I
you
agree.
just take part. If you go to the conventions, if I'm not saying for everybody to do this. I call Teresa and I'm like, hey, what if this happens at a dance, Teresa? And as far as Color Lab's concerned, what should I do here? And she'll be like, Charlie, do this. And I'm like, okay. So that's the other thing. Even before probably before Teresa, I don't even know who was before Teresa.
Dana.
Dana Shermer, yes. I could pick up the phone, call the number for Color Lab, somebody would answer. If I was like, hey, I need to do my membership and I am not bright on this laptop, and can you do my membership? I'm not making, Charlie. About a week, well, it's been more than about 3 weeks ago, I called Teresa up and I'm like, hey, can you please do my membership? I'm not going to get online and do it. So I talked her through it. I'm like, this is my credit card number. This is, you got it all. Here, we're good. And she's like, okay, do you need another badge? I'm like, no, I'm good on the badge. So, I called Teresa up and it's done. So, I know there's at least one, maybe, I don't know what organizations are out there for callers. But I don't think there's anything better than Color Lab. There's not.
Yeah, I agree. If I could share with you, when I
Oh
was
yeah.
a very young man, I think I was 17 maybe when I attended my first Color Lab convention, and it was 1985, and uh, I had been an associate member for quite a while and had just become a full member. So I went to my first convention, and one of my calling heroes has always been Wade Driver. And Wade Driver was doing a talk about music and how to use music to work the crowd, and control their emotions with music. And it was really fascinating to me. And so afterwards, I was young and stupid enough that I walked up and went, "Hey Wade, I really was interested in what you were talking about, and I'd love to learn more. Would you have a few minutes to talk to me?" And he said, "Well, tell you what, it's lunch break now. Why don't we go sit together at lunch and we'll talk about it?" I got to go and have lunch with my hero. And he was just a down to earth guy. And over the years, Wade's become one of my dearest friends. And it's, that's the kind of access and the kind of magic to me that the Color Lab is.
Mm-hmm.
And I absolutely love getting to go to Color Lab and enjoying the days with wonderful people and good friends. So I'm like you, I'm really looking forward to it.
Uh, that so many people attend Color Lab color wise, and I encourage dancers. Whenever I'm somewhere, I'm like, hey, you really should go. Even if you just went for the dances to check them out. But that's just like that. Marcia had asked me. She said when we were getting ready to go on the cruise, she said, "What are you looking forward to the most? You want to do this one, that." And I said, "I'm looking forward to seeing my friends."
Yeah.
Because we talk on occasion on the phone, but where you are in Oklahoma, we don't cross paths unless
Sadly,
it's a
no.
convention or a cruise or whatever. And so you build these relationships and you're just like, man, when is the next convention? And then, it's like, hey, well, or what state convention is between us? Let's meet at the state convention, something like that, So that the relationships and getting to meet people, and renew relationships and all that. But it's just amazing. So
Yeah, it truly is. Now, you have attended a few of collar schools. I know that GSI is one that you've been to
oh yeah.
at least a couple of times. Um, Tell me about the GSI school and how you've enjoyed that. What do you get out of that?
Yeah, GSI school, I'd taken a couple of smaller, I say smaller just because it was less callers, and a couple of Ken Ratusi did a couple here in Atlanta, in the Atlanta area.
Uh-huh.
And I say I helped him with it. He would send me the flyers and all that, and I would put them out. Um, and so I took the school, and probably the first time I really met Tony was at one of those, and I knew who he was. He didn't know who I was, and he found that out pretty quick. But so because again, I think I did give me 3 steps for a singing call just to say, he was like, let me hear a singing call. So I did give me 3 steps, and my same thing, I'm all over the place, loud, dancing around a little bit. And he was like, wow, okay, do some patter. So I started doing patter, and then it was like right and left through, veer left, Ferris wheel. He's like, whoa, where did that other guy go, Charlie? And I'm like, wait. He said, the guy that was doing that 3 step, let me hear that guy. And I was like, I don't know what. So, but color schools. So, did a couple of the smaller color schools, got a lot out of them. Ken Ratusi is a fantastic color coach.
Oh, yes, he is.
And,
Yeah.
so, and then again, he had Tony with him a couple times. He had a few other people helping him out on other schools. But then one year in Atlanta was my first GSI at the national. That was my first national convention, actually. Never been to one, and it was 4 miles from my house. So I was a big part of the national convention here in Atlanta. So I went to GSI, and first time I met Jerry Story. I'd always heard about him. I seen him on YouTube. And so I met Jerry Story, and of course, Tony's there, and all these other callers that I'd seen on YouTube and everything else. And they're getting their instructor hours in. And of course, I'm meeting all these other callers that are in the school, GSI, and, it's free. So, outside of paying for your hotel, which I wasn't staying in a hotel because I was 4 miles away. I mean, it was completely free. And I was like, I can't believe this is free. You're getting all this instruction for 3 or 4 days, 3.5, 4 days. And, and like we were talking earlier, these different point of views, hey, this is how I approach a singing call. And then over here, I've got somebody coming up, Wade Driver. This is how I approach a singing call.
Right.
And you're like, oh my God. And so the GSI school, I mean, it's just, you have to attend one if you even, and I'm surprised how many people, and of course I'm not in that group anymore, but they'll split you up typically into 3 groups. Newer callers, mid-range callers, and callers that have their own clubs and do their own traveling or whatever. When they're introducing people, they'll be like this one guy or girl that's like, I've never called a tip. And I'm like, what? You've never called a tip? What are you doing? But they look for that, and they'll put them in that group, and they'll teach them chicken plucker or whatever.
Yep.
And get them going. And I like to, when we have a break, I'll go over and watch that number 1 group or the A group, whatever they want to call it, that, and find that one who's, I've done 3 singing calls in my life, and I decided I wanted to do this. I'm amazed at what the GSI school does with that. But we need that. As rough as it sounds, we're the younger of the callers right now, Charlie. Me and you told me about how old you were when you said you were 17 in 85. I think I was 17 and a half in 85.
Okay.
So we're pretty close to the same age.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, GSI is great when it comes to caller education and caller training. And it's something that for the price, free.
Yeah.
I think we all get together every year, the last day, and everybody throws in, some cash just to give to the GSI school. And let them do whatever they need to, because it's not cheap. I'm sure,
No, I honestly don't know what it cost GSI to put that on, but yeah, you're right. It can't be cheap.
Yeah.
But you know, I've been really honored and fortunate to be on the other side of the table for that too. I've been on the staff on the
Mhm.
GSI Collar School for a little while now, and from my perspective, I'm working on my collar coach accreditation, and so like you mentioned earlier, I'm working on hours um, Tony is mentoring me. Tony and Jack actually are mentoring me through that
Mhm.
process, and it's a huge honor to get that kind of
Oh
help from
gosh,
those
yeah,
kind of guys.
absolutely.
But to be on that side of the table and to watch people develop over that week, it's amazing to see. The difference in somebody, especially like you mentioned, the people who have never called a tip,
Mhm.
and by the end of the week they can call people through. You
Yeah.
know, and like you mentioned chicken plucker. So they use chicken plucker a couple times and a couple of conversion modules, and but they're able to do it,
Yeah.
and it's so rewarding to get to see that and be part of that. So it's really cool. Now
You
you
know,
also attended the total uh color school.
yeah, I went to the TOTL total color school with Tony and Ted again, and that's where Tony Oxen died. Ted Lazat's where the TOTL comes in, obviously.
Uh-huh.
That's their little side label, because they have their own record labels also.
Right.
And uh, I love singing calls, and I love really good music, and love George Strait. That should be obvious. And yeah, Tony had talked to me a couple of years ago, well, 2 years ago, a little more than that, and said, "Hey, this is what I'm doing. You want to be a part of this thing that we're trying out in Nashville?" And I've been in Nashville before, and I thought, "Are you kidding? I get to record a song in Nashville? Are you serious?" So I'm all in, and plus it was a school, and I think he said they limited it to, I think we had 8 callers
Okay.
there, staying in this little hotel just outside of Nashville, where we went to the studio Hilltop. I think it's
Hmm.
Hilltop. Yeah,
Yeah, it
Hilltop.
is. Yeah.
We went there. We picked out the songs we wanted, and again, Tony, we talked several times on the phone a couple weeks prior to the school, and he was like, "Hey, what songs are you thinking about?" And I threw out 5 songs that I'd picked out, and we talked a lot about them. And Troubadour is not one of them. The one that I did ended up doing.
Really?
I picked out a few other songs, and one of them was I said "The Race Is On," and because I love that song. And he said, "Well, Charlie, it's been done before, and he said we can do it if you want." And he said, "But it's been done before." And he said, "So I was thinking maybe we should do something that hadn't been done." And I said, "Okay." And so I threw out a couple others. Gosh, one of my favorite songs right now. It's Sturgill Simpson, "Long White Lines."
Mm.
Um, and I told him that. And again, Tony said, "We really need to look at," he said, "you might want to get somebody that the name is more known. Sturgill Simpson, he's just not a everyday name."
Right.
Um, and so I was like, okay. And then I said, "What about like Troubadour's too slow?" And he's like, "No, I don't think it's too slow. We could speed it up." And he told me, "Hey, you can speed up a song. You can't slow songs down typically."
Yes.
And then I was like, okay. And so I had no idea Troubadour would work because it is a slow song to listen to, the way George Strait does it. And so that's how that came about. And so, but getting back to it, the first night you go to Hilltop Studios, and I have no musical ability when it comes to playing an instrument. Okay. I took mandolin for a year, and I can play as much mandolin now as after a year of taking it. Before I take, I can't do it. I'm just not talented like that. Um, so going in there and watching these 7 or 8 professionals, session
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
players, they come in there and they said, "Here's the 8 songs," and I mean they were all over the board. And these guys listened about 10 seconds on a disc, and they're like, all right, let's go. And they start cranking out these tunes. And I'm sitting on this giant sofa, like every documentary you've ever seen, in a recording studio. I'm sitting on this giant sofa. There's a guy behind the board. There's somebody over here playing fiddle. Janae Flanor, by the way, artist of the year. She's over here cranking out Troubadour. And I'm like, oh my God, what is it like to have that ability, So we record that song and you get the music, and then the next 4 or 5 days, you're at the hotel with Tony and Ted. We had Scott Bennett and Shauna Career also helping out with us then. And so they're like, hey, Charlie, let's do this with your vocals. And then over here, then we're doing some patter stuff. It's an actual caller school.
Sure.
And, so I got a ton out of that. I got a record out of it, or recording. We don't have records anymore, unfortunately. So, that was thrilling to be in Nashville doing that and recording the song. And then the last night, Marcia and I went over to Nashville and hung out, and I was like, man, this is the life, And I was joking with her. We were sitting in a bar on the downtown strip there, and we were in Miranda Lambert's restaurant, and I said, me and Miranda Lambert have a lot in common. And she's like, what are you talking about? I said, both got record deals in Nashville. So, but no, the TOTL was phenomenal. I loved it. At some point, I'd love to go back. I would like to do. I have a bunch of songs I'd like to do, and get some more songs done. But TOTL was a great experience, and hopefully I'll do it again sometime. We'll see.
Excellent. Yeah, I got to experience the Hilltop experience for the first time. I guess it was January. I went in with my first session with Royal. Now that I'm on recording for Royal, and just like you, I was completely blown away by the professionalism and the ability of those guys to just listen to a few minutes of, not even a few minutes, a few seconds of the original song and just go.
Yeah. And I mean, Tony's been doing that for a long time, and of course Ted's in with him now. But watching Tony work with these musicians and the guy behind the board, who he knows everybody, because he's been doing it for years with them. But watching him work, you're just like, wow, I mean, that's just amazing. And even Tony, we're sitting there when he's listening to the music for Troubadour. He goes, you think that's too deep, Charlie? That might be a little low for you. And I said, Tony, I don't know what language what do you mean? Is it too, you tell me. And he was like, nah, it'll probably work, and so we kind of went from there. But, just watching somebody like that, it's just a magician. Things like that.
And, again, very similar experience. While they were playing my song, Tony turned around, looked at me, and he says, so is that an arrangement you're happy with? You like the tempo? I mean, he's so on top of it, and he absolutely cares what your input is too, which it's really an amazing thing. He's another true professional.
Yes, he is.
We normally, you normally ask an interesting question concerning a particular couple of movies, and I already know your answer to the movie question.
Okay.
Your question typically is Footloose or Dirty Dancing, and I know you and I are both Footloose fans.
Yes.
So I'm going to ask you a little bit of a different question.
Nice. Okay.
Pancakes or waffles?
Well, pancakes.
Pancakes. Okay.
100%. Absolutely.
Really?
I like waffles. Don't get me wrong. But I went through a phase. I mean, I would make pancake when I was working morning watch, night shift for midnight to 8 as a police officer. I did that for about 4 years in a row. I would get off and I would come home and I would make pancakes every morning just for me. I love pancakes. So pancakes, 100%. I'll eat them. Now, if you got waffles, I'll eat waffles all day. But given the choice, I'm going to get pancakes out of the plate.
Now, do you have a process about your your butter to syrup ratios on your pancakes, or
No. The butter I can take or leave. I like butter,
okay,
especially
all
if
right.
it's real butter. I don't want margarine. I like real butter. But I'm a syrup guy. And it bring it right back to square dancing. Didn't know because growing up in the South where I'm at, it was whatever Miss Buttersworth or whatever I just loved syrup. Um, and when I went to the farm at East Hill, the dance that Ted has every year up there in New Hampshire, up in that area. The people were sitting at the table and they had asked the people that were serving us, they were like, "Do you have any real maple syrup?" And I'm like, "What is the big deal? It's
Oh, dude.
just syrup." And of course they knew I was the Southern kid. And somebody was like, "Here, Charlie, just have this," because somebody brought some from home, real maple syrup. And I'm like, "You seriously brought your own?" And so I had that and I was like, "Whoa, okay, well, I see what the big deal is now." And so I've got probably 2 more bottles still from that I brought home from up there of real
That's
maple
awesome.
syrup. So I am a pancake and syrup guy. My favorite.
Excellent choice. Well, listen, buddy, I know it's getting late where you are, and I know we've been going for a little while now, and that's awesome. First, before we cut this off, I just really, really want to thank you for allowing me to turn the tables
Oh,
around
absolutely, brother.
this with you. Um, this has been an absolute joy. And the other thing, I want to let you know that I really appreciate you and Marcia and our friendship that we've developed here the last couple of years, because you guys have become very, very special to me, and I really I enjoy the time we get together, and even if it's electronic like this, I enjoy it.
Charlie, man, thanks for saying that, buddy. Like I say, our personal relationship really took off probably about a year or so ago,
Yep.
a little bit longer than that. And especially with some of the national conventions we've been to and getting to spend some time after the dancing. And I can't tell you how much it's been a pleasure to me. And the podcast helped me keep these relationships going, because I don't know, you didn't mention that you were going to follow me to Florida. If you like, you can come to Tampa if you
Oh,
want to live
perfect.
in there.
Anytime, man.
I tell you what, when I get down there, I will put a club together and we'll bring you in twice a year.
That's
And
perfect.
so that way we'll get to spend some time on the beach.
Well, I mentioned to you when we spoke on the phone talking about doing this, that I'm going to be coming down to do the Hotlanta weekend in
Mhm.
25. It's next year,
Okay.
so I hope we can carve
Absolutely.
out some time together at that.
Absolutely. We will do that. And I will see you in about 4 days, 4 to
Perfect.
5 days when we get to Color Lab. And we didn't even talk about, but you're going to be in Wisconsin, I'm sure,
Oh,
for
absolutely.
the Nationals.
I'll be there
So
for the
we'll do
Nationals
that.
and the GSI school. So
Charlie, thank you for asking to do this. I appreciate it, brother. Let's do it again sometime. Next time we're going to turn them around. I'm going to come after you next time. And now I've got to put the pancakes and waffles in every time I do a podcast. I love that. That's a great question. And that was right in my wheelhouse. I love pancakes. I've got to do one thing just for Jet Roberts. Jambalaya is my favorite singing call. Have to get that out there. That's an inside joke with me and Jet. But Jambalaya is my favorite singer. So, Charlie, as always, a pleasure, brother. I'll put this out in a few days, probably about a week or two.
hey, whenever
And
it's convenient, man, I'm just like I said, very excited we got to do
awesome,
this.
brother. And I'll see you in a couple days, man.
You got it, buddy. Talk to you
See
later,
you,
buddy.
Charlie. Yeah, man. Bye bye.
See you. Bye bye.
Science face, grand square. You walk into a restaurant, strung out from the road. You can feel the eyes upon you as you're shaking off the cold. You pretend it doesn't bother you, you just want to explode. I'm a man and wave, here I am, on the road again, there I am, up on the stage, there I go, playing star again, there I go, turn the page.